Welcome to the Bliss Builders podcast, a podcast about mental health
and personal growth
with Kristina
and Sandra Diebel.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Bliss Builders podcast. My name is Kristina, and here's my beautiful co-host Sandra.
Hello.
And today's episode is going to be about how to feel your feelings. In this episode, we're also going to discuss why it is so important to feel your feelings, what are the benefits you're getting from feeling your feelings, and we're going to show you how to actually feel your feelings with a real life example. So this episode is going to be a bit different than others because we are going to experiment live in front of the camera. So you're going to see us practicing what we are learning ourselves, because it is a practice. And this episode is dear to my heart because I believe that once you've learned to feel your feelings, there is no fear anymore.
Just making sure that you can hear us, guys, and the microphone.
My belief is that we don't fear things happening. We only fear the feelings we might feel when those things are happening. And the reason why we fear our feelings is because we have never really learned how to process them in a way that we don't need to fear them. Which is also the reason why I think feeling your feelings is so important. Because once you've learned and practiced that, there's literally nothing to fear left, which is wonderful.
Sounds great.
And the benefit of that is basically that it's easier to stay in prolonged states of joy and bliss, which is what we are all about. So I will get right into how to feel your feelings now. And I have brought different options because everyone has to decide for themselves which option works for them. There's probably a lot more options out there. So you can be inspired by them and try them out for yourselves, as we will try them out in a short moment, and just see what feels best to you, because that's pretty much what it is all about. So today I will practice with Sandra.
Hello.
Sandra will be my little rat for my experiment.
Nice.
Sorry, I mean, like in
That's
German,
okay. I like reds.
yeah, in German you would be like, it would be a bunny.
Kaninchen. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was thinking about the same, but I was thinking, what is the translation for
But here
experiment
it's usually
bunny?
rats or monkeys.
Is it an experiment bunny then? I don't know.
Let's implement it. Let's just make this a thing. Let's call it experimenting bunny or
That's it.
experiment
And
bunny.
cute. Sounds cute.
Yes, and it fits
All right.
more than a rat,
Perfect.
in my opinion.
Okay.
So
So
I've asked Sandra to bring us an possibly unprocessed emotion,
yeah.
so we can then play with it and go through option number 1.
And just to let you know, guys, so this is not trained, absolutely not. So what Kristina will do with me, or the options, will be the first time I will do that. And also, as maybe you already grasped it, I'm not the tool person. She is the tool person. So I'm always a little bit skeptical about those things. But I mean, that's the perfect situation to give it a try. And I will try to be as much confident with that. And yeah, let it be, and let's give it a try.
Okay, so which
Okay.
feeling did you bring me today? Or which sensation did you bring me? Or situation?
I maybe go from the situation. You can help me to define the feeling. Is I brought an example from my relationship where I get some, I would say it's frustration probably, when you feel misunderstood. So especially, I mean, misunderstanding is quite often the case, okay, and you can solve that. But when I even already proved with mirroring that I understood the other person, and he says yes, 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 tick, and I said, okay, cool, done, fine, I get it. I just have another point, kind of, or like this part, I get it, but I want to talk about this part of the message. And this, there comes frustration up in me when we come back to the original level of the message that we've already been through. That was taken. Like, no, I got it. I got it. Go to the next one. And so we have this kind of endless loop. So there's how can I get out of this? So yeah, this is really like a.
Well, the first step might be to feel your feeling and to regulate your nervous system, which is kind of making you want to rip your hairs out.
Yeah, sometimes literally.
And will help you to process it, which then makes communication easier again.
That is true. I've noticed that already.
So, option 1 that I brought today is a 4-step option.
Okay.
I'm gonna list it very shortly. The first step is to locate the feeling and sensation in your body. The second step is to describe it in as good as you can. The third step is to objectify it. And the fourth step is to befriend the feeling. So that works due to when we practice that, we learn to associate a feeling with that process instead of the stories that we usually tell about feelings while we're feeling them or while we're experiencing them, because we're not completely feeling them most of the time. So we're usually suppressing them and making up a story in our head about the frustration, and that story is running in circles forever and ever and ever and keeps us feeling the feeling a lot longer than if we just process it fully and let it go.
Especially when you keep thinking about it the whole time and over again, and you can literally watch how you can talk or think yourself in rage. Like it's getting worse and worse and worse. Like, even when the problem was not that big, but you're getting
and the aim of feeling your feelings right away is to stop that cycle right then and there, which makes everything after easier. Okay. So we're gonna start with step 1, which is locate. So if you think about that situation, where in your body do you feel a sensation, the emotion?
Probably the lower stomach, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, mostly there.
Okay, so if you were a medical doctor, how would you describe that feeling? Is it buzzing? Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it pressure? Is it pain? How would you describe that feeling?
Now, you challenged me, especially with the English terms. Probably a tension. Yeah, so it feels very tense, everything. Hard, maybe. Maybe I also contract my core at the same time a little bit. Hot is probably a good point. I never thought about that, but it might feel a bit warmer. Yeah, more or less.
Okay. So now you've described it, so we can move on to the next step, the third step, which is objectifying the feeling. So now that you know where it is and you've described the sensations of it, if you were to pull it out, how would it look like? If you give it an image, it doesn't mean that like this has to be the ultimate, but like just try to make it into an object and then like make up how it looks like.
Hot, tense, hot. I don't know why, but the face of an angry bird, like this thing comes up in my face. There is the red one.
That's fine.
A ball of these angry birds, the red one. So this made me feel and somehow warm, but like these squeeze balls, you know, when you have stress.
A squeeze ball with a red angry bird on it, or a red ball with an angry bird on it. Like
the whole ball is the angry bird. Like the whole ball is red, and there is the face of this angry bird. You know, like this game Angry Birds, where you throw where the birds are getting thrown. I never played it, but I've just seen it. And I think there were some Happy Meals at McDonald's once or something. These little balls that are angry birds, and I don't know somehow because it's also angry and it's so just. This kind of comes up.
All right. So it's cool that you already visualized it as a ball, because a ball is something you can hold and it's also something you can throw away.
That's true.
But now we come to the last step already, which is to befriend that feeling. Now, if you were to become best friends with that feeling, you probably don't even try to get rid of it. So just imagine this little ball as your best friend.
I just imagine me and this ball jumping along the riverside in the sun, picking some flowers.
Yeah. And now if you want to, at that step in the process, you could like talk to that ball and be like, I love you, you little grumpy, angry bird ball. It's like, you're welcome here. Stay with me. We can play ball.
Okay. And I just should think about it, how I can become friend with this object, where I actually very rarely become friends with objects.
Well, it's not an object in that sense. You objectified it, so you made it like an image in your head, because emotions are really hard to pinpoint a lot of the times because they don't have an image. So if you make an image for it, it's a lot easier, because it's like creating a face for it, or like a person that you then can interact with. So you kind of like detach yourself from it a little bit. You separate it so you can look at it. And since you now can look at that little angry bird ball, you can befriend it and you can talk to it, because now it's a separate thing from you and you're not it anymore. You're not the feeling, you're not one with the feeling, but you're kind of like separated, so you can be kind to it and you can show love to it. And by doing so, you will a lot of the times notice, first of all, if you go through that whole process, you've just seen it, like it's hilarious. So a lot of the times the state of feeling inside of you changes, so you calm down. And since you also detached yourself because you objectified the feeling, you can now look at it with different eyes, and then you can befriend it. And once you've befriended it, it usually passes by itself. Researchers have found that it only takes up to 90 seconds to process an emotion if you process it fully. So I think all of us can be able to stay with an emotion for 90 seconds, which doesn't mean that you have to. It's all up to you, and it's a process that you can practice if you want to, if you feel that resonates with you. But we have a lot more options. So this was only one of them. And the result from this is, from what my experience is so far, is that you just become very calm in the present moment, which then allows you to communicate better and react differently and respond better to your partner, to situations, to yourself. And also by loving and befriending the feeling, usually the fear which might have caused it goes away because you can't feel two emotions at the same time. So by loving the feeling in that moment, you can't have two emotions at the same time. So you basically replace fear, frustration, anger, and so on with love in that moment because you love it and you feel it then. So it makes it easier afterwards to deal with whatever situation brought it up to begin with. So this is option number one. Not saying that is the one and only or the only thing that is true. So you kind of have to see what resonates with you.
And I reckon if you can make it to the stage where we did, now that you can love about it, imagine you would have this in the situation itself. So you are in a fight or something, and suddenly you start to laugh. And I mean, this is kind of a de-escalation itself already.
Yes, I mean, I've seen a lot of examples where one partner kind of stays regulated and then starts making jokes, and the other person literally cannot stay mad at them because they're making jokes, because it is a completely different emotion and it pulls you out. Okay. What is the next situation you brought me to show my next option?
The next is a tiny one, like a tiny irritation, also fine.
Sure.
Okay. Do you maybe want to change the microphone to the other side in the meantime, because your hair is or solution. Okay, a very small one, but I have this in already since a long time. I hate when I hear people chewing loud. Or sneezing more than 2 times.
That's good to know. I actually thought that was a joke.
No, it's not. 1 time is fine. Second time is like, okay. 3 times,
Okay.
I mean, and the chewing is so usually when you're eating with me, there will be always music or something, some noise, because even my own chewing can irritate me.
Interesting. Okay. All right. I will now first list option 2 and count the steps. So option 2 is to first become aware of the emotion, then you're feeling that emotion. Then to validate yourself and that emotion. The third step is to ask the emotion what it wants to show you. And the fourth step is to feel the emotion. So it's similar in some parts and different in other parts.
Yeah.
So let's, you're already aware.
Yeah.
So first step, check.
Done. Yeah.
First step is done. So now we're gonna you will validate the feeling. So validating the feeling means, okay, so you're feeling, would you say it's hate?
No,
or would you
it's
say
not
it's
hate.
annoyance?
Yeah, I'm looking at our emotional guidance scale. It helps a little bit to see what it is. I would say it's annoyance, irritation, something between that.
Probably. Irritated.
Yeah.
The thing is, if you can't name the emotion, don't worry about it, because in the end you feel it inside you, so it's not that important to know exactly how it's called. You can also just call it feeling. So so you can be like, hey feeling, I see you. To validate it, I see you. It's absolutely understandable that you're feeling upset about it, or that you are irritated, or if you can't name it, it's absolutely okay that you're here. And I see you, I hear you, and it's okay that you're here.
Okay.
So that's validating it. So how would you validate it?
I mean, you already did, more or less.
Yes, but now do it in your own words.
I accept that I am irritated by that. And I accept that the want of change of that comes up in me, and yeah.
I mean, you can accept it, but validation is not about acceptance. It's just about basically talking in yourself or out loud if you want to. But most people prefer inside, especially when they're in a conflict situation.
on the dinner table.
Yes. But like if you literally just know, like you become aware of it and then you just validate it, which literally just means, hey, feeling, I see you, I notice you, it's okay that you're here.
Hey, feeling, I notice you. It's okay that you're
Yeah, I mean, you can find your own words, but you don't necessarily have to accept it right away. That's what I mean, because acceptance can be hard.
And there is a difference between validation and acceptance.
Yes, because like validating, I mean, in a full validation process, I'm sure acceptance is somewhere in there. But for some people, accepting their emotions in that moment can be tricky, and it helps to first validate it, just to see it. You don't have to accept it. You can first just look at it and
So
be like,
would
I
you
see you.
would you maybe say that validation is equal to becoming aware of it?
It's not only like with awareness in the first step. I personally mean just becoming aware that you are feeling an unpleasant emotion.
Mm-hmm.
So you're just basically like, I'm angry, irritated, frustrated, so whatever's, or I'm not feeling good.
Yeah.
And then the second step is to look at it and be like, I see you. I'm like kind of like having a conversation with it in your mind of the fact that you are aware of it. And then the next step, the third step, is to, well, ask it what it wants to show you. Sometimes,
What do you want to show me, little feeling? What do you want to show me?
well, if you do that, I'm pretty sure you will be better mood in a very short amount of time. I mean, if you talk to, like, that sounds to be very loving already. So if you talk that loving to your feeling, I'm pretty sure that it will pass and be like, thank you, goodbye. I've been seen.
I've done my job.
I feel like emotions, our feelings can be like little students in a classroom. And when they arise, it's like literally them just raising your hand. And as long as you ignore them, their hand will stay up. You know, like the nerds in class be like, you know,
Attention,
they want your
attention.
attention. And as soon as you literally just give it attention and validate and be like, yes, yes, honey, what do you want?
I see you.
I see you, yes. A lot of times they're fine. Or like a child calling mom, 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 mom. And as soon as you're like, yes, my child, it's like, it's okay. So emotions are a little bit like that sometimes, I feel.
It's a very good metaphor. I love it.
So yeah, in the third step, you kind of ask it what it wants. So it depends on the situation. Sometimes an emotion shows you where boundary has been crossed. For example, anger a lot of times shows you where boundary has been crossed. Sometimes an emotion can also just show you what you do not prefer. So in your case, you prefer if there was no noise.
Yeah, maybe as you're saying this, maybe this. I mean, who was with me at the dinner table once know how my dinner tables look like. Things like that. Maybe there can be a little part of, okay, this is something that's out of my control. This is something, that kind of disturbs my picture of how it should be, and the peace I would like to have with it. And it's something I can't do anything against it, especially the sneezing. With the chewing, I can turn the volume up. That's it. I've never thought about it that way.
Have you ever asked yourself why it is irritating? Because it, like, I mean, it sounded to me like it's literally disturbing the peace and the picture you have in your head on how
Yeah.
it should be.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of now. I mean, I've asked myself the question a bit, and with asking myself the question, I didn't get to an answer, but I was getting better in dealing with it.
Mhm.
So it doesn't annoy me that hard or affect me that hard as it did, like, I don't know, 5 years ago or something.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I was getting better in processing it, but yeah, I wasn't finding a real answer to that so far. Maybe also because I don't want to see the answer, because I don't want to be a control person.
Mhm.
But in some point, I probably am. Yeah.
Yeah, what I've noticed through experience is that whenever we are in resistance to what is, to what literally exists, we suffer. No matter if it's we a lot of the times we can't change everything.
Yeah.
For example, you said you're even annoyed about your own
Yeah.
noises, and especially in that sense, it seems like it's something that
You
can't
have to
be
deal with.
changed
Yeah.
unless you become deaf. But otherwise, it can't be. But then you might be annoyed about how it looks like. So it can't be changed, and therefore, I think if you can get to that state where you can accept it, which it sounded like you already are,
Yeah.
then and put your focus somewhere else, then you're fine. But now we come to the fourth step, because in this option number 2, the process is a little bit different than in the first option. So now, after we've asked what it wants to show you, now we're getting into the feeling and feeling it in our body, where it is, and just paying attention to it and observing it. Once again, from my understanding.
Somehow everything comes together in the core, more or less.
Which is interesting because there's
Do you ever feel a feeling in your legs?
sometimes.
You do?
Yeah, my knees.
Tell me more. Sorry, I'm
like-
very interested in that.
It's pain in my knees.
With
Or pain in my toes.
with
Or
what feeling?
like the stinging feeling. It's hard to describe. I don't know exactly what feeling it is, but I just know that I felt it. Most people feel their feelings either in their throat, their chest, or like their belly.
Yeah.
And which is funny, because all the body regions are associated, like, depending on well, it's all about like the psychosomatic reasons of the connection between emotions and pain. And I mean, if you look at your own body while you're feeling emotion, you will feel it in your body and you can see it. So certain emotions are associated with certain regions in your body. For example, and which I think is really like interesting, anger is stored in the liver, according to that. So a lot of times you feel it in that lower belly region. Apparently, doesn't mean that you have to. You can feel feelings all over your. You can feel bodies everywhere.
You can feel bodies all over your feelings.
Yeah, you can feel feelings all over your body. Sadness is, according, to what I've read, and I don't know where I've read it, is stored in the lungs. I think it's in Chinese medicine too. And like, traditional Chinese medicine, I think I might have it from there. So yeah, sadness is stored in the lungs, and then different emotions are stored in different places.
or some real anger, maybe you feel in the middle finger.
But either way, it does not really matter where you feel it, as long as you just pay attention to it. And then, because as soon as you really focus on the sensation in your body, it is kind of like a meditation. So the mind chatter and the story we made up, like the stories we make up in our head, or the ego makes up in your head, of why you are feeling that feeling and all the reasons of why you should continue to feel that feeling, they disappear for a moment because you just are present with the feeling.
Something comes up in me. Tell me what you think about it. Because that is one part of a lot of tools where I have my problems with locating in my body. Some people can. For me, it's a bit hard, especially, it's locate where. But what I'm thinking of now is that automatically something in my body changes. Like, for example, you make some fists, or you wrinkle your toes, or your
wrinkle your forehead, like
something like this. So there is a body reaction about nearly every emotion that comes unconsciously. Would this be like a little twist for people for them like myself, where it's hard to feel it in the body, but concentrate on, have a look on what your body actually does, a body action, and focus on that?
It can be part of literally focusing on what happens with your body. And it also can be a great tool to become aware that you're currently feeling an emotion that needs to be processed, because anger usually tenses up.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything is.
Certain fears can be burning. Nervousness can be burning too. Shame is definitely a burning sensation, because when you are embarrassed, something happened, you're embarrassed, and all the blood shoots into your brain, and it feels hot in your head.
That's true. In the cheeks.
Yeah. So I feel like anytime you either tense up, because I think all the unpleasant emotions you tense, while
That's
happiness
true.
and everything else you relax. You like all the what we perceive as positive emotions are the ones that are relaxing us, that are expanding us, that are warm, but they're not hot and burning, but they're like warm and cozy and opening. And all the other emotions usually tense up. So every time you tighten, you're pretty much feeling an emotion that you are not aware of, possibly. Every time you feel, you feel your face burning. You do. Although that it might be more obvious. The same thing as like when you clench your fists or clench your jaw. A lot of people clench their jaws and don't even notice. You might even notice it now that you're clenching your jaw. And a lot of times when you tell people to relax their jaw, they only notice, oh, I have been actually tense the whole time.
That reminds me of, where was it? I think, there was one yoga teacher I watched online on YouTube, and I liked it because she reminded me, actually, in the doing or in the the relaxation part, every time about the forehead. The
Relax
point
your
between
forehead.
the point between the eyebrows. Because, and you forget about it. You absolutely forget about it. Relax the point between the eyebrows. True. And it feels, it feels automatically, it feels automatically so much more relaxed. And it's a little thing. It's a fucking little thing. And you have to have someone, or I had to have someone that tells me this every 2 fucking minutes. Because then it was again and again and again. It's like, but we need to remind us. So interesting, the feeling body connection.
Yeah.
For sure.
So this was option number 2.
All right, cool.
Now we go over to option number 3.
Wait, with option number 2, the end result is the same as with number 1. Become friends with it, or you have to objectify it, or what?
No, like the end result with the second one is basically you've already asked, and then you just feel it and let it pass. With letting it pass is literally just stay with it until it transforms, because what you will notice, no matter which option you take, but as soon as you really pay attention to your emotion that came up for a little while, somewhere around 90 seconds, especially in the beginning, it can sometimes take longer, also depending on how much you get distracted. But once you just pay attention to the feeling, usually it transforms and you notice yourself become more calm, and that is usually a sign that it's already passing. You don't have to force it to pass it. You don't have to the more you try to get rid of it, the longer it usually stays, because you're kind of keeping it there. But if you just focus on it and just become aware of it, it usually passes by itself within a few seconds.
And like within this example, it can also give you a clue where there is still something to work on or to process or whatever.
Exactly. So for example, in option number 2 with the asking, you can get a glimpse sometimes of a subconscious belief maybe that's underneath, like it shouldn't be that way, that is in resistance and therefore is causing conflict, or you become aware of a habit, or you become aware of a negative thought pattern or something. So yeah, you have that in option number 2.
Okay, sweet. Then number 3.
Okay, what kind of situation do you have for the next experiment?
For number 3, I thought I'm gonna bring, unfortunately, an ego one, probably, where when situations come up where it comes to marketing or marketing advice, and someone else answers, who knows that my profession, answers first, more intense instead of me. People not asking me or those kind of things, or other people want to tell or show me things on a superior, or it feels for me on a superior level, depending, out of what position this is, where this, and that's something I can't define the feeling completely, but somehow a bit of the sadness, or this like this unseen thing is like, hey, here is expertise, and I should be the one to answer, or to know more, or to give some advice, where it's maybe I feel a bit unseen, or unseen, and that my expertise is not getting
valued.
Yeah.
So you feel unseen and not valued.
Yeah, in the profession. Yeah.
All right. That might not be on the list. So we have this emotional guidance scale from another episode we did. That doesn't mean that only because what you're feeling is not on that list, that it does not exist.
Nope, sorry, not on the list.
But the list would be extremely long if you would put everything on there. So you can use this as a guidance to see around where you think you are, and don't worry about being wrong. There's no wrong. So it's whatever you think it is closest to. So for example, feeling unseen on that list, I would put to unworthiness.
Oh, that's very, very low.
Yes, but it is kind of, because if you know that you're worthy, from my experience, if you truly know your worth, a lot of times you don't care if people don't take your advice, because you're like, well, They will find their own knowledge at their timing, and you kind of relax. But
It's
every time
it's a
you,
middle thing somehow. On one hand, I do,
Mhm.
and so I don't have to spell out because it's not my business, or you don't pay me for that or whatever. So
yeah,
not my thing. Um,
and sometimes you don't. It's normal. Like
yeah,
it fluctuates.
yeah,
That's absolutely normal. And with this, like, because when we feel unworthy, we then, in a smaller scale, feel unseen, and then we want to be validated. So we want other people to see us, to validate us, and to tell, like, because it kind of then shows how much knowledge we have. Because if they ask us, then we can show how much knowledge we have, which in turn makes us, in our minds, sometimes more worthy, although we already are worthy as we are. And sometimes we know that, and sometimes we don't, because it fluctuates, and it's a process. And that brings us to option number 3.
Okay.
Option number 3 is a 5-step process.
A what?
5-step.
5-step process.
A 5-step process. And the first step is, once again, similar to the others, to notice.
Okay.
To notice the emotion. The next step in this scenario is to allow the emotion. The third step is to have compassion with yourself for feeling and allowing the emotion. The fourth step is to then reflect on the emotion, which is similar than in the last one with the asking. And the fifth step is to then take action and then respond once you've gone through the whole process. So now that we've kind of already, like, you've noticed what you're feeling. So once again, we are at step 2, which is allowing the feeling. So allowing the feeling is kind of the same as in the other steps where it's like says feel or focus on the sensation. So with allowing, it means that, like, if you need to cry, let yourself cry. If you are really tense, let yourself be tense. So give yourself time. And once again, if you really just focus on the sensations in your body, and if you need to cry, cry. And if you, like, whatever you're feeling, just let it be there for 90 seconds. It usually passes already anyway.
Okay,
So,
would you have a tip for that, let's say in public? Let's say you are at a restaurant, at a dinner table, talking with friends, whatever, things come up, and you feel sadness. It would be probably not very common that people start to cry in the middle of a restaurant for 90 seconds.
that is true. So once again, the same way I have many options that I also personally use depending on what the situation is, I feel like that you can also choose what you are comfortable with in that situation. Because crying in public takes a lot of confidence. So there have been situations where I was in a safe environment, so I did cry in public, and I kind of went through that process in public with other people. Or, well, I did not include them, but it was okay to cry, let's say, for me, in my opinion. And then there have been processes, like there have been times where I was with a group and I did not want to interfere with my crying because it was not a fitting situation in my mind. That doesn't mean that it was. And so I just went to the bathroom, felt my emotion, cried, validated it, be like, hey, I see you, it's okay, and then went back. So there's different options. You can also just acknowledge that emotion, be like, hey, I see you, I'll come back to you later when we're back home. Also something I've done in the past.
Okay.
Be like, hey, I can feel you feeling. I don't feel comfortable with you right here. I'm sorry about that, but I will get to you once I'm home.
I have this this child image again in my head. So, yeah, we get to it when we are
Yeah,
home.
but to me, in my opinion, a lot of times all these emotions that come off, all the triggers, are from our childhood. And back then we were not allowed to process them, but now that we are adults, we can take our inner child by the hand and be like, hey, I see you're angry, an angry upset little girl, or an angry or a sad little girl, or whatever. I'm taking you by the hand, I see you, and I will get back to you once this is done. And I feel like as long as you acknowledge it, then it usually is like, okay. And a lot of times you get home and you're like, are you still there? And it like, or it's basically like asking the kid, are you still angry? Like, no, it's fine now. And you're like, all right. So a lot of times just by seeing
time
it,
heals everything.
yeah, sometimes just by literally paying attention to it and by seeing it, it's already fine. Especially like with smaller triggers and emotions. Well, there's no smaller, but like less intense.
Yeah.
Less intense and less overwhelming. A lot of times, yeah, as soon as you notice it, it's fine. So, and that's why I want to give you all the options that I have found and tried, because then you can pick and choose what suits your need in which moment, and you can also make your own combination of different steps however it feels good to you. I do that too sometimes. For me, I think acknowledging it and validating is always very helpful, and feeling the sensations, and the rest I mix up depending on, yeah,
The situation also.
exactly, the situation, how I feel, what's comfortable.
And I
'Cause that
think
changes a
that
lot.
I would change from find the location in your body to pay attention to your
To
body
tenseness.
reaction,
Yeah.
because this is something I have my troubles with identifying with.
Mhm.
But with the body reaction, that's better. And also with loosen it up, or
Yeah.
when we, as we said, there is probably a tension with a negative feeling, just with letting it go, letting it relax more.
Yeah.
This is
For
something-
example, now with option number 3, we're now at the still at the step of allowing.
yeah,
And in the example of sadness, for example, when you're in a public setting, you can allow and be like, and you can do that by talking to yourself in your mind and be like, for example, if you feel that, like, that thing stuck in your throat, and you feel it and you're like, and you feel your like head becoming, a lot of times when I feel like I'm crying, I have this
in the throat.
yeah, I have like something
pain.
stuck in my throat, and then I also have pressure in my head that literally feels like it's gonna squeeze the tears out of my face. It literally feels like someone is doing this to my face, but from the inside. It does. That's how it feels like to me.
Can someone animate that?
Like, plop. And allowing in that sense could just mean to be like, it's okay to have that, and just be like okay with it. I personally, in that sense, it's for me, it's always easier to um, go inside of the sensation, for example, this or the the
Throat.
the closeness and the tightness around the throat, and then just talk to it. Because for me, if I talk to it as if it is a separate thing, it becomes a lot easier. So if I be like, hey, I see you, it's okay, you can like, you're allowed to be here, welcome. That is my way of allowing it, but you can find your own, as always.
Okay, next step.
Okay, so the next step then would be to give yourself compassion. So once you've allowed the feeling, and especially like when you're alone and you've, I don't know, let yourself cry, be compassionate and also be proud of what you've like be compassionate, be kind to yourself for what you've just gone through. because you have maybe, like, especially with bigger things, you have been suppressing it maybe for ages. So be compassionate and be like, hey, I'm proud of you. You felt that feeling. That was hard. And be compassionate in the sense that you give yourself grace for feeling it and not be like, you shouldn't cry, you little baby. But be like, hey, I'm proud of you. You're safe. And I feel like, especially for me, in those moments, telling myself with compassion, you're safe and you're loved, helps me personally, because it's kind of like telling that little sad or angry or that little child that was told when I was a child. Because the reason why we have such issues with feeling our feelings is when we were children, a lot of times we were not allowed to process them.
Oh, like, for example, when you hurt yourself, you're stumbling and start to cry. Don't cry, it's fine.
Exactly. A lot
Something
of
like
times
this.
we were invalidated. A lot of times we were ignored because our parents just couldn't handle the sixth time this day that you're crying. And they're like, just
Fair
stop
enough.
crying. But as a child, you just soak that all up, and you're like, instead of hearing that the crying, instead of hearing that the crying is unnecessary or something like that, and there's other ways, you only hear that you're not allowed to feel that feeling. So you hear different things than the parents mean sometimes. But when we're adults, that still stays with us. So a lot of times, if you look at angry people or upset people, it's basically their inner child just acting up. I'm not saying that that is necessarily true, but that's how it feels to me, and it makes it also easier for me to deal with other people's emotion, because if I just see it as their inner kid that wasn't allowed to have that feeling coming up and be like, no, I'm not doing this, it makes it a lot easier to be kind and loving to that person than when I'm like, it's a full blown adult and she should know better, because that usually brings up my little inner kid who is like, so yeah. And I feel like if I give compassion to that little child and be like, hey, I've got you, you're safe, you're with me now,
Give it a hug.
yeah, and take it by the hand. I don't always visualize it in my head and see a child, but I do talk to parts of myself that are feeling and are experiencing the emotion. I do talk to them in that kind of way, like, or to the emotion itself, like, hey, I've got you, you're safe now, you're okay, you can be here, you belong. And by doing that, a lot of times it melts away, and you can feel that relaxation coming and this emotion transforming into, relaxation, pretty much, into this calmer state. It's the same thing when you had a good cry and you feel so calm and relaxed afterwards because it's finally all out.
And even with other people, for example, let's say someone is angry or no, instead of, you can fight that and you can level each other up with that, or then however you want to see it, or try this once. If the other person is mad at you, just go there and give them a hug. And things like that come already without even that you have to say anything. But just giving the other person a kind of a safe space and the feeling, it is okay, it's fine, I still like you, I still love you. Things that can be awkward maybe with your boss, a little bit, depending on your relationship to the boss. But let's say partner or child or family members or good friends, is an option. Again, if you do this with your boss, please make a video and send it to us.
Yes, that's really brave.
But I would love to see the reaction.
I would love to be brave enough to do that sometimes.
Maybe at some stage. If you have a story about that, please tell us.
So after you've given yourself compassion in step 3, in option number 3, that's where we are, in case you lost track. We now get to the 4th step, which is to reflect. So now that you've calmed down a little bit, now that you've given yourself compassion, now that that feeling has melted a little bit and you're relaxed, and if you have the time, you can now reflect upon it and be like, okay, what did this whole thing show me? What did it want to tell me about? Is there a need that I have not been paying attention to? Is there a boundary that has been crossed that I have been ignoring? Someone else maybe done something to you that you do not prefer, and you can reflect upon that, because once we are in a calm state, we can then come back into a more grown up and logical minded space of mind and reflect on what just happened. And then once we reflected, we can then, from this calm perspective, in the next step, respond. So I feel in those situations that a lot of times you already do that, because, for example, if you are like, we had the situation, we were all talking at the dinner table. Sandra was there, and two other friends were there, and me and another friend talked about marketing things, and she was sitting there. And what could have happened is, if she would have completely been unaware, is that she could have stood up and be like, are you all stupid? Like, I'm the marketing expert. Why don't you listen to me? You're having your conversations about whatever, and you're never asking me. So the reaction could have been very different. But her reaction was, she sat there, she seemed to be quite calm and collected. And if asked, or if she felt inspired to, she would share stuff. But otherwise, you seemed fine.
Yeah, and I kind of was okay with the situation, and as I could also agree to the things you said, and it's nothing that, oh my goodness, it was fine, and tried to make the best out of it, and maybe add a little add on yours instead of trying to overrule or something. So with this step, you're actually now in my loved area, reflection. That's more my tool area.
Well, reflection is step 4.
Yeah,
responding is step 5.
I know. I was just because
you like reflection.
Yeah, and because you've done 4 and 5 in a row. So yeah, if I would, for example, reflect on that, I probably also know where it's coming from. Is in my agency time sometimes, it was from time to time the case that clients didn't implement, for example, what I've said or what I've told them. What is also because of budget, what is because of manpower, what is because of time that you have to soak that in and really understand things, that you practice it actually, and then you have to practice it in the right way, because there are 50 different ways of doing something. And only because you do, let's say, email marketing, it doesn't mean that it's gonna explode and you will be at, I don't know, increase your cash flow, but the way of doing it, or also when I was overruled by some bosses for things, or undervalued in jobs where, on the other hand, for example, since I'm away from that, let's say that I got a lot of validation about my skill sets from other points where I just dropped a few things, that also are quite easy for me, but for other people harder to deduce. So I would say this comes a little bit from the past, when my advice is not taken that serious sometimes, or is getting overruled or not implemented. Things would make sense then if some of those situations occur. But yeah, I hope that my preferred reaction would be like the one from yesterday or whenever it was, like exactly how you've described it. Accept it, and I know my expertise. I know I have value in that. I know I'm worthy. Yeah, and if someone wants to talk about things, I'm absolutely open, happy to help.
Mhm.
If not, then not.
Yeah. Well, as I said, like, I personally believe that parts of us always know that we're worthy, and they do know those things, but other parts of ourselves, maybe old parts from our childhood, don't know that yet. So a lot of times when they come up and you bring that into light, like, hey, you are worthy and all that, then it's like, okay. And then it's another thing that might not be able to trigger you in the future. Because that's also my experience. Once a feeling is fully processed, it seems to me from my experience that it is gone. And then the next time this exact same situation happens, the emotion doesn't come up anymore and you stay calm. Which is not to say that that is the goal. There's nothing wrong with emotions because they're helpful guide that shows us what we need to pay attention to. It just shows us either where there might be negative beliefs underlying, where there might be triggers or habits or needs that have not been met, or where we have not expressed ourselves, or yeah, a lot of the time it is just a need for expression, and once it is expressed, no matter if it's inside or with others, a lot of times it's fine. So after the reflection, once you've looked what underlying belief system it could be, and once you've asked yourself a couple of questions like, what about this triggered me, you don't have to go too much into detail. As I said, with all of this, always do what you feel comfortable and have time for in the moment, because otherwise you can't keep practicing it. So be kind to yourself, because especially shame and guilt are the things that keep us from doing things. So
Yeah.
if you cry and then you shame yourself for crying, you will probably not cry again. Same thing as if you cried as a child and got shamed for it, it might take years and years until you feel brave enough to cry again. So that's why it's so important to be kind to yourself while and after feeling feelings, because otherwise you make it harder for yourself to do it in the future. Same thing with guilt. There's nothing to be guilty about, no matter what. Things can go wrong, but just it helps to see yourself as a like as like, or see that part of yourself as a little child that is still practicing and that makes mistakes, but you still love it anyway. So even if the kid got angry, you're kind of like, okay, you got angry, I still love you, try again next time. And with the fifth step of the third option, the responding part, once we've calmed down from the emotion we just experienced, we can then consciously, because then we are aware and conscious, we can consciously choose how we want to respond, which gives us the option to choose compassion. So if someone has screamed at you and that brought something up, you processed it, and now you have the option to consciously choose, do you really want to scream back, which anger would sometimes do because it feels attacked, so it wants to attack back, or you want to defend yourself. So now that you're conscious, now that you had a little break, you can choose to be compassionate, you can choose to listen, you can choose to understand, you can choose to
understand is a good point, especially when you're in a conflict with someone that goes zack 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 like a ping pong thing. I've acknowledged it for myself is as soon as I choose, okay, now I'm not responding to show my point of view or try to make the other person understand, but just to understand it. Oh my goodness, it takes much. Especially if the other person is still, high and half attacks you and the things, and you said, no, I can do that, and you swallow so many things at some stage, but trying it to really and try to understand the other person and their perspective. And because there will be so many different things that come up probably where you would like to respond, but leave them for later. And I don't say that you should ignore them, but for now you can come to them back a little bit later in another discussion, whatever. But as soon as I change to okay, I leave that out. I'm just here for you. I'm just here to understand you.
Mhm.
And I try everything that I can understand your viewpoint, what you want to tell me, and then I do everything I can that I show you that I understood it.
Mhm.
This de-escalated the situation every time immediately.
Yeah. Yeah, understanding, as same as validating, does a lot. With responding, a lot of times
What is this smile about?
once you've become conscious, which I think that's why that's why feeling your emotions helps, because once you've practiced it enough to be aware in the moment, and then to process your feeling in the moment, and then you're calm in the moment, then you can respond from that calmness and choose better outcomes. So that also goes for habits, for example. So if you realize that you have become angry or sad, instead of possibly grabbing a bottle of wine and drinking it all by yourself, you can pause, and then you can consciously choose. You can still choose to drink that bottle if it helps you to cope, but you're now conscious. You're now consciously aware. You're not doing it on autopilot anymore.
Yeah.
And awareness is always the first step to changing a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're aware, and if you practice just becoming aware of your habit every time you do it, at some point you will be like, actually, I don't need it anymore. Might take time, might take some other steps as well. Same thing as other bad habits.
And you still can consciously allow it to you, that you continue with that or that you lower it step by step, but the consciousness is the difference.
Yeah, because it just brings up awareness and it gives you the conscious choice, so it's not just an automated habit.
That's a big thing.
The same thing is with procrastination, which I've had for a long time. And I've noticed that procrastination a lot of time is shame. So, for example, I want to get up earlier.
Yeah.
But then I stay awake very late. And then I already feel like guilty and shame. Then I already feel guilty about staying up so late. And then I sleep in. I mean, I hear my alarm, but in that moment, I don't feel good enough to get up. So then I sleep in further. And then I wake up. And then I'm ashamed or feel guilty that I've done it again. And by feeling guilty and shameful, I'm not really paying attention to it completely. So the cycle repeats. Once I've processed that feeling, it becomes a lot easier to do that. And now, in my own life, I'm at a point where at least it's a conscious choice. So I wake up and I'm like, all right, there's nothing wrong if you sleep in longer. It's okay if you want to stay up longer. But the feeling behind it is better. So that doesn't necessarily mean that it can bring you to the point where you realize you don't actually have to necessarily change that behavior if it serves you, which to me it does a lot of the times. But it helps you to be kinder to yourself, so you don't suffer as much because you don't feel guilty about it.
Yeah. I have the same, for example, with eating. I would say it's half that I eat healthy, but I just like sweets,
Mm-hmm.
like cake and that stuff. And when I'm at the cafe, is I like to eat something while I'm working. I still often order something sweet. I eat too, and probably earlier in the years, I would be very guilty about it. Like, and I need to, I need to change, and I need to eat healthy, and I need to get a wriggle on that. Now I'm absolutely aware of that, and I allow it to myself, because at the moment it is not my goal to lose weight, or is not my goal to get in shape. At some stage, probably again, but not at the moment. I have so many other things I want to focus on right now, and if I want that in the moment, and if I enjoy it, and if I can afford it, it's fine. I don't blame or shame myself for that. I accept it, as I also know I can change it if I want to.
Yeah. And I feel like I see that with like a lot of other habits too. For example, what I've noticed with myself when I was still drinking more regularly than I do now, and with others around me, is sometimes you don't feel necessarily good, then you start drinking alone or with friends, then you do something that you might be like, you open up more, you become vulnerable, you cry, you do things that you then feel ashamed of, and then in the morning, and that is also, in my opinion, what can get you sucked into alcoholism, is in the morning you wake up sober, not only with a hangover, sometimes you don't even have a hangover, but with the shame and the guilt of what you did the last night before, because you did things that you don't need to be ashamed of, but you do feel ashamed of. That's why you can only do them when you're drunk.
Because you didn't do it that consciously?
Yes, and also because you suppressed feelings and they only came out when you were drunk and you kind of lost control a little bit, and the grip has loosened.
Yeah.
So now you felt the emotions that you did not want to feel, and now you're ashamed of feeling those emotions. For example, especially with with men, I've noticed it a lot, that they will then open up and cry, and then they will feel so ashamed of opening up and crying, which they don't have to feel ashamed about, but that they then in the next morning, as soon as they wake up, they feel horrible about letting themselves become what they like, whatever horrible things they think about themselves. And then the next step that they do is, I don't want to feel this, so I'm numbing it again, and then they continue drinking right away. It's pretty much like having a hangover, and to kill the hangover you continue. That's also a lot of people get sucked into alcoholism, because you have a hangover, you don't want to feel the pain of the hangover, so you keep on drinking, because you know that if you drink again you won't feel the pain of the hangover, and you get in this endless cycle, and the only way to stop it is to feel it. So either feel the emotion or feel the pain,
Okay with it,
and be okay with it, and be kind to yourself. I think this is the most important point in anything.
and don't think too much about how the others can, see it.
Yes, I think that detaching from the opinion of others, while at the same time loving yourself, is the beginning step, and possibly a hard step to take.
Yeah.
Because only when you kind of love yourself enough that you feel safe and secure in yourself can you truly let go of other people's opinions. But the good thing is you can, at least in the beginning, let go of certain opinions that they have that no longer suit you. But it takes a lot of courage, and it takes some inner work, and some practice, and a lot of self-compassion. Okay.
Okay, so that was number 3, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Due to us already talking for such a long time, I will just mention the last one. The fourth option is especially then helpful if you are maybe new to all of this, and all of the steps so far scared you. The fourth option is basically, once the feeling comes up, you just notice the sensation, for example the tenseness that you feel. So, okay, I'm angry, And then you ask the feeling. You don't have to name it. You can just be like, hey, feeling, what movement do you need to be transformed and released? You can also be like, what movement do you need to leave me? You can put the language around it as you feel comfortable with it. So you ask it what movement it needs, and you do the asking maybe even by trying. So you're moving.
So you really mean actual moving my
Yes.
body, moving.
So you kind
parts.
of and by asking, I literally mean, for me at least, you can ask it in your mind. Some people get answers, but for me it's most of the time it's a lot more physical. So it's more like a testing which movement helps. So that can be dancing, that can be punching,
Please
and
not
boxing.
punching in someone's face.
Yes.
We don't do that. We would not recommend that.
Yes, we don't recommend punching people in the face.
Unless you are in a professional boxing environment. But I think even there it's not allowed to punch in the face, right?
In certain boxing rings, I think
Maybe.
it is.
But yeah.
But another option you can, like, especially if you feel the need for punching, depending on your environment, sometimes you can't punch. But what you can do is tense your whole body and kind of like tense all the muscles all at the same time and then release them. Sometimes that can help. So that it can be a movement. Shaking can be a movement, because shaking, same as tensing, they're all mechanisms of how to regulate the nervous system and calm you down as well. So it kind of helps with that process. So if you're more in a physical thing, try. And if you're angry, especially anger, since it's a very tense emotion, if you're angry, try tensing every muscle that you can consciously feel, like every muscle in your body, for as long as you can hold it. And when you can hold it no longer, you just let it go. And that's in that fourth option also kind of how you pretty much let go of the emotion. So you become aware that you have it, and then you're tensing all and you're moving it with motion, because it's called an emotion. It's energy and motion. So there's the theory that you can also just through motion release it from the body. So you can become very tense and then release. And once you release your muscles, you also release the emotion. Or you can shake and literally shake it off. I mean, to be fair, those are the only two options I know.
Get the angry bird stress ball and squeeze it to my throat. To squeeze something can also be a thing.
Yes.
If you have, a stuffed toy,
stuffed animal.
Yeah, that one. Or even some clothes or something, you can really squeeze without hurting any person or animal.
The goal of all of this should always be to, well, feel the emotion, and most importantly, to get to a state where you can consciously decide not to hurt people. And where you feel good again.
But yeah, if it's needed, you can also. Well, that's actually pretty good.
A little expression.
For the ones that just listen to us, I just punched the couch.
Yes.
Not Kristina.
I forget that sometimes.
Yeah, me too. And I think, maybe we should explain it to the people just listening.
Yes. Also, if you wonder what the emotional guidance scale is.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
If you wonder what the emotional guidance scale is, you can find it linked below in the show notes with pictures. So it is and explanations. So that can help.
True.
And you will also find a collection of all those options. And I'm sorry that I don't have better names for them than option 1, 2, 4.
Maybe in the doing, because we haven't finished the papers yet. But maybe in the finishing of the papers, we're gonna create some titles.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Some names for them. Otherwise, they just stay option 1, 2, 3, 4. But I've written them down for you guys, so you can use them as guidance and practice them, and maybe make your own. and give it a name if you feel like it. And
it's like in the zoo when there is a new animal born, and they ask all the people, how should we name this animal? This baby animal. We can ask our audience how we should name the options.
Yes, if you have any recommendations, leave them in the comments. Write us an email. And since we're already on it, follow us on Instagram, subscribe onto our YouTube channel. It helps us a lot, and we appreciate.
Write us with 5. Right. No.
Give us 5 stars. Rate and give us 5 stars.
Yeah, what she said.
Give us 5, rate us 5 stars on Spotify.
Write us 5 stars. We would.
Yes, we would love it. We would love it. Comment. And also, if you have any questions, if any of that was not clear to you, if you feel like now you have even more questions, send us your questions. You can send them via Instagram. You can write them in the comments below the video. I'm pretty sure you can also comment on Spotify.
You can, yeah.
And we will take our time to answer your questions, either by just commenting underneath it or by making a new episode in which we explain and give you answers to your questions. So we're very happy for any questions you might have, and we're happy to answer them. And if you want more, and if you want access to our
papers,
emotional guidance scale papers, and our
all the other giveaways we have for you in PDF forms. You can download them, you can have them on your electronic device, you can print them out however you want. Then follow us on Patreon, become a member of our community, and you will get all of them there. Also, you will have the episodes, the regular one on Patreon, that you don't have to switch any platforms, and there also will be some extra episodes for you guys in this membership.
And in the Patreon membership, you will also be able to chat with us and have group discussions about topics and get pretty much the newest news and access to everything always straight away.
Well, I think with that, everything is said and done.
Yes.
For this episode. Then thank you very much for these options and for this live workshop, or however we would want to call it, experiment. It was nice to be your experiment bunny.
I hope you can take something away for the future.
I will definitely try, and we'll try to remember and get this Angry Bird ball. Now I want it. Then I can throw it. For sure. Anyway, it was very interesting, and also cool for me to see is I'm not the huge tool person, that there are some ways I can shift it a little bit so I can take it better for myself. That was also quite good, for example, with the body and the body reactions. So yeah, probably also something for you guys to take away. You don't have to take everything one-to-one. Make it your own style, and mix it up with the stuff that you feel comfortable or maybe more comfortable with.
As always, we just want to inspire. Thank you guys for listening, and see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.